Here we go.
I found myself awake in an unfamiliar space. And I can't recall just how I got here, but I'm making my escape. Cause the things surrounding me are giving off bad energy. Through the clouds I can't discern if there's some solid ground to plant my feet. But I'm stepping out and there ain't no more doubting. My mind is free to buy. No, it's my season.
What's up, friends? Welcome back. If you've been here before, if you haven't, welcome for the first time. I'm Tafari. I am a musician, producer, singer, songwriter, dancer, choreographer, actor, model. All right, I get it! And creator on top of those things now. On my channel, I do vlogs, I do sit-down videos where I talk about my life experiences. I am soon to make some tutorials for music production and interviews with friends, among other things. So if any of that interests you, definitely hit that subscribe button, throw me a like, leave a comment about anything you see in this video that you want to talk more about. Without further ado, I'm gonna just get right into it. So today, I am gonna be talking about whether or not you should go to an Ivy League school. I went to Brown University. I graduated in 2020. I'm not gonna tell you if you should or shouldn't go. I'm essentially just gonna give you my experiences, talk about the pros and cons. You can take my experiences and do with that what you will. It's been a little bit also since I've been in college, so I'm in a little bit different place in life now than I was when I was still in school. Sorry, I'm pulling up the notes here. Go get my notes together. I just want you to know that you are really special. Oh why, oh why, oh why, oh why. You. I also just want to say before I get into anything in this video that all of my experiences are obviously informed by my identity. So like as a Black queer person who comes from like a low income family or low income based on my university standards, that definitely impacted the way that I went about making my decisions for college, the way that I interacted with people while I was on campus, the way that I navigated social spaces. These experiences obviously will have that lens, but my experiences would be different than, for example, another Black queer person would experience who went to Brown. So my experiences are completely my own, but should shed some light on at least like generally what it's like to go to Brown and what you might want to consider when making the decision to apply to or attend an Ivy League school. All right, so I'm just gonna go over kind of like a brief outline of what I'm gonna talk about in the video. I'm just gonna give you all a little bit of background about the school that I went to. Like I said, I went to Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, about what I studied there, things that I did, clubs, kind of how I interacted with people socially, etc. And so I'll cover first the financial aspect of going to an Ivy League school, specifically Brown. Secondly, I'll cover academically kind of what that entails, and then lastly I'll get into socially what my experience looked like, and then I'll also talk about a little bit about if I think it's worth it. Okay, so starting with my school and what I was involved with. Like I said, I went to Brown University. I started in 2016 and graduated in 2020. Also, for a little background, I'm from Georgia, kind of small town. So when I got to Brown, I thought that I wanted to be a doctor. As most people thought, I was pre-med. So I came in, started just taking my pre-med requirements, and quickly realized that that wasn't for me. By my sophomore spring, so the second semester of my sophomore year, I had pivoted to doing music full-time as my major. My concentration is what they call them at Brown, not majors, but I'll call it a major for the context of the video. I had switched my major to music by my second semester. You know what it was? It was chemistry. Chemistry really took me out. I said no. Peace out, y'all. I'm good. Got a blast! If you have any questions about how I made that switch from medicine to music, definitely leave a comment below and I can potentially do another video about how I made that decision, what influenced those factors, etc. But I studied music, graduated with a degree in computer music and multimedia. So essentially that means it was focused on production, engineering, recording, the more technology focused side of music. There obviously were requirements that were like theory and history based, but most of my classes ended up being like production workshops where I was making music or learning techniques for making music. Extracurricularly, I was involved in way too much stuff. I came into school part of a community engagement organization called the Bonner Community Fellows. It was a job, kind of. It was stipended. It had a certain amount of hours per week that I was required to be working or involved in this program. I did that for my entire time that I was there. I was also in an a cappella group for my entire time there. I was in 2 a cappella groups my freshman year, but that was too much. So I ended up pretty much just staying in one for the remainder of college, but that was from freshman year as well. My sophomore year, I ended up joining a dance group, a hip hop dance group. It was all student choreographed, and that ended up being like my other big time commitment in school. Those were the 3 main things. I had a job all throughout college, like on top of that community engagement, working continuously while doing everything else. So yeah, that's kind of like a general overview of what my time at Brown looked like. Yeah, now I'll go into what the financial aspect of my time at Brown looked like. One of the biggest factors I think that people consider whenever making college decisions is like, what the money look like, okay? I'm gonna look up what the tuition for Brown is right now. So this says, and this is from finaid.brown.edu, their 2022-2023 academic year tuition is $62,680. Yeah! There's $2,466 of fees, $9,368 for room and board, and $6,472 for a meal plan. And every first year is required to be on a meal plan. I think the fullest meal plan. They also have like an estimated personal expense of $2,700. So their total direct and indirect charges they've estimated to be $83,683. God damn. Yeah, so I definitely was not paying that, y'all. I'm gonna just let you know right now. Your boy was not paying none of that. Could never. The way that I was able to go to Brown and afford school, because I definitely don't come from anyone who could pay $80,000 a year. Brown does actually have really good financial aid packages, and actually I'll really briefly talk about what financial aid is. So there's like federal and private financial aid, and so like FAFSA is the form that you fill out to receive whatever federal aid that you'd be eligible for. It usually would not even cover like a fraction of the cost of attending a school like that. Private institutions are so expensive that it like can only cover so much. Financial aid, on the other hand, is something that is provided by the school. With Ivy League and like schools of that range, they usually have pretty large endowments. So that just means like donors will give an amount of money. They do big fundraisers to raise a whole bunch of money. And a portion of that money goes to supporting students who meet a specific financial need. I know when I was going there, it was anyone whose parents made or whose family made under $60,000 a year, 100% of their tuition, room and board, and meal plan was covered. So that's kind of the category that I fell into. But let me see what it is right now, because I'm curious. On their website, they say Brown meets 100% of each student's demonstrated financial need. finaid.brown.edu states that there is 0% parent responsibility for most families with less than $60,000 in annual income. So I guess it's the same from when I was going there. The average family responsibility for the class of 2026 is $27,230 per year. So that's still a wild amount of money, but it's like they said, if your family makes less than $60,000, then you wouldn't pay any of that $27,000. You know, obviously they're not covering your additional or variable expenses. That would be like your textbooks, your travel to and from school, decorating your room, things of that nature. But everything else that's like school related, so like health insurance, meal plan, room and board, all that would be covered. In my case, I met that requirement. My parents make under $60,000 a year, so I didn't have to pay anything for any of that. At Bonner Community Fellowship that I was a part of, they gave us a stipend of $2,000, which I could use to put toward my textbooks, put toward my anything else. A lot of students, even if they fall under that financial aid standpoint, they still will receive scholarships. I would definitely recommend, if you're applying to college, especially an expensive college, you apply for as many scholarships as you can and that you qualify for. They definitely will help. And a lot of times you can still receive financial aid with the scholarships, but a lot of people will get scholarships to help cover the additional costs of that. But for me, like I said, I got full aid, and then I was doing that Bonner Community Fellowship either my sophomore year or my junior year. I ended up getting an on-campus job on top of Bonner just because I needed more money to pay for life or travel or save up or do whatever I need to do. But that also helped me supplement some of my income and balance some of my expenses out. And then a little about Brown's admissions. Brown has something that's called need blind admissions, and you'll hear this a lot when you're applying to colleges and looking at different colleges' admissions procedures. But need blind admissions, essentially all that means is that they don't look at the demonstrated financial need that you may have in your admissions process. So say you do fall under that, your family making $60,000 a year, then they're not gonna take into consideration the fact that they would have to pay you full financial aid in your admissions. They would just admit you based on the standards that they have for students academically, extracurricularly, SAT scores, ACT, all that stuff. However, the loophole and like kind of the part that I think some students have issue with is that need blind admissions is only for domestic students. So if a student lives internationally, lives outside of the US, then their admissions are need aware, which means that Brown is considering how much financial aid they would need in their admissions determination. Also, like if you're a transfer student, if you're transferring from another school after your first semester of school, then they also have need aware admissions and would take your financial need into consideration in determining if you could go there. So now I'm gonna move a little bit into the academic part. So as I mentioned before, I originally started going to Brown wanting to go into medical school after Brown. So I was taking a lot of science, math classes. So Brown is unique academically, and I think there are probably some other schools that have practices like this as well. But of the Ivy League schools, I know Brown is like the liberal hippie kind of school because of this policy and like other policies. Like other schools want to make fun of us for it, even though it's definitely the best policy. Like, I don't know, they're just jealous. But Brown has this thing called an open curriculum. And essentially all the open curriculum means is that you don't have specific college-wide, like university-wide prerequisites that you have to take as a student there. So for example, if I'm starting college wanting to do applied mathematics, all I have to do is take applied mathematics courses and whatever courses I have to take prerequisite to that to be able to take more upper level classes. So if I am coming in wanting to do marine biology, all I have to take is like science and biology related classes in order to receive my degree. There are requirements for other classes, other types of classes that you have to take. I'm pretty sure there are elective requirements that each major or concentration requires. Oh, it's been a minute. But yeah, the open curriculum essentially just means like all first years do not take the same classes, which is definitely a huge blessing. I think another thing that is unique about Brown's academic curriculum is that we have the option to take classes pass-fail. There it's called SNC, which stands for satisfactory or no credit. And essentially all that means is that at the beginning of the semester, you can elect to take a class for a grade or for pass-fail. They say that you shouldn't take prerequisites for pre-professional school pass-fail. So like any pre-med requirements, pre-law requirements, or like pre-business requirements, they say that you shouldn't take those pass-fail. But I was a music major, so you already know I was taking plenty of class pass-fail, especially because I was doing mad other stuff outside of school. When I was studying pre-med, didn't take a lot of classes pass-fail because I needed to get those grades. Pre-professional schools will like calculate your GPA based on the prerequisites that you take, but Brown doesn't like calculate your GPA. Like on your transcript, you won't see a GPA because you can take your classes pass-fail and there's no way of really like assigning a number value to pass-fail grade. So those are the kind of the two things that make Brown unique. and definitely something that I would recommend considering in terms of the schools that you're applying to, like seeing if they have the option to take things pass fail, seeing what their prerequisites are like for first years and for students in general. Those are definitely things that are important because, like, you know, some people value taking the same class as everyone, having a common experience with all the rest of the students, but those are definitely classes that you could be using to do something that you're more interested in. So keep that in mind whenever you're looking at schools. So something that I definitely want to bring up is that, like, even though these schools are elite, even though they're like Ivy League schools, and Ivy League schools, they're like Ivy and like Ivy adjacent schools. So like there's a bunch of schools that are of the same caliber as Ivy League schools. But honestly, if we're gonna be real, I have a lot of friends who go to, for example, University of Georgia, the biggest state school here in Georgia. And in talking about when I was taking chemistry and talking about our class curriculum, it was pretty identical. We were learning a lot of the same concepts. We were learning a lot of things at the same rate, and being tested on a lot of the same material. So to be real with you, there's not a whole lot of difference. And it depends on the class, obviously. You know, obviously if it's like a pre-professional school, there probably be a pretty standardized curriculum that you would need to learn regardless of the school you go to. I think where the prestige of the school comes in is in the research availability and potential and the accomplishments of the professors. Research is probably one of the biggest draws, I'd say, that to schools of Ivy League caliber. A lot of really distinguished people in all fields who are interested in teaching end up teaching at or studying at Ivy League or those kind of schools. For example, if a student is a PhD student at a school, at a university, they more than likely have to teach classes as a part of getting their PhD. So a lot of PhD students in different fields who are actually studying at the university to get a degree and be a more distinguished researcher in their field will end up teaching classes. That does lead to a lot of really dope and interesting classes. Like, for example, I took a class on rap and studying rap and writing raps. Essentially, all of our assignments were like writing and recording ourselves rapping. It was actually super dope. Taught by an amazing professor, Enongolo Mumbakosongo. Goes by the name Samish. She's a dope artist. Definitely check her out. But that was like a class that I was able to take. There's so many language and like culturally driven majors and concentrations. That is another perk of going somewhere with that level of prestige, because it draws people internationally. So another thing that's less directly academic but is a product of the academic environment at Brown or in Ivy League schools in general is there being like a lot of academic pressure to like give 100% all the time to your classes or to kind of whatever. And that's just because, you know, a lot of the people who are going to these schools were top of their classes in high school or were super involved in like every aspect of school. But in reality, once you've gotten to college, you did the thing already. After that point, don't stress your grades. Unless you're, like I said, unless you're going to pre-professional school, unless you're going to med school, law school, business school, whatever, do not stress your grades. I promise you, nobody is looking at your grades after you graduate college. No job is about to look at your grades. All they care about is where you went to school. That's it. I promise you 100%. If you take anything from this video, please take that. Do not stress about your grades. Just do your best. Try and pass your classes. Try not to waste your time. Make use of your resources, but don't stress your grades for real. Like, those who are focused on a competitive nature are missing the essence of college, because there's so much more that you could be taking advantage of other than just studying all the time. College is really a time to find yourself. It's really a time to explore. It's really a time to grow your perception of the world. And if you're always studying, that's cool, but like, you're gonna miss out on the real important stuff that actually matters. Because the gag is, in any job that you get after school, they're just gonna teach you what you have to do at the job anyways. You're not even gonna use the information you learned at school, unless you're doing some like engineering or chemistry or science. But even then, they probably will still teach you what you need to do on the job. Like, don't stress. Don't stress your grades. Don't stress academic competitiveness. I know that at some schools they do like curve the grades based on like what the highest and lowest scores were. Brown doesn't do that personally. I'm not sure about the other Ivies or like Ivy adjacent schools, but yeah, just don't worry about your grades, y'all. Just get through it. It's gonna be hard enough, trust me. And that kind of transitions me into my next point, which is the social environment at Brown. Something that I think is a big plus about Brown, definitely a pro, is that there's not a super competitive environment. And I was in an art degree, so it's probably a lot different than maybe some STEM degrees, but for the most part, you see a lot of people studying together, working together, helping each other get through these classes, taking advantage of office hours. You have a lot of resources to help you do well. And it's just a matter of taking advantage of that and using the access. All professors have office hours that you can take advantage of and ask any questions that you have. All professors have TAs. The TAs are usually students, so that makes them a little bit more accessible. They also know what you're going through. They're kind of experiencing the same thing as you, just a little bit older. But feel free to ask for help, essentially is what I'm saying. College is not a time to just thug it out on your own and just like struggle through it. Ask for help. There's strength in asking for help. It takes a lot more courage to ask for help than to just struggle through silently. So this aspect is kind of like a pro and a con, at least for me, coming from my background. Brown and Ivy League schools in general bring a very, very super diverse crowd. Some of the most diverse crowd you probably find in the United States, other than like super big metropolitan areas. But for a student's age group, you'll find people from all over. You'll find people from all continents, countries all over the world, from all different types of backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses. There's an immense diversity of people, and that's definitely one of the best things about going to a school of that caliber, of that prestige. On the other hand, though, it is definitely a select group of those people from everywhere. You know what I mean? So like, for example, as a low-income student, yeah, there were other low-income students, but the majority of students at Brown are paying something to go there, which means that, for example, that their parents would make over 110, 120,000, and their family would make over an amount of money. And I'm not saying that those people are just like better off, because the amount of money you make and the disposable income that your family has available are not directly correlated, but it's different. If y'all make 120,000, it's different than if we're making 40,000. It just is. You know what I'm saying? And it depends on the amount of people in your family, but like, those are different. Those are very different experiences and ways of going about the world and ways of viewing money. Yo, my entire perception of wealth changed when I went to Brown. My entire perception. I didn't know what wealth was before I went there. There are people who are like children of CEOs of Fortune 500 countries. There are children of like important political figures. There's royalty. Like, going to an Ivy League school will definitely expand your view of wealth if you aren't from a lot of wealth already. Different. That is really different. It's a challenge. It can be a con at times. As someone who's not coming from wealth of that scale, to navigate spaces like that, you know, I wasn't able to do a lot of the things that people who were coming from wealthier households were doing. Like I said, I was paying my way essentially through college myself. Luckily, a lot of it was covered, and my parents helped when they could, but it wasn't super often. So I was working the whole time when a lot of my friends didn't have to work. You know, couldn't go out as regularly as I wanted to. I had responsibilities that I had to tend to first before I could do even my homework sometimes. And luckily that didn't totally get in the way of me pursuing extracurricular interests that really fed me and that I loved a lot. It didn't get in the way of me building community, but it definitely was something that I had to navigate, and something to keep in mind. I think it's important to build community with people who come from similar socioeconomic backgrounds of you. It doesn't have to be the only community you have, but it just makes it easier to kind of deal with some of the issues that arise from not being from the upper echelons of, or even from like upper middle class. Like, y'all, the money, different. So kind of touching on the community building aspect. So Brown has 7,349 undergraduates enrolled as of fall of 2021. So that was last year. And because there are so many students, there are a bunch of student organizations. It's funny, a random fact, but when I went there, Brown had the most acapella groups per capita. I think they were like 16 or something. Super random. If you're into acapella, definitely would recommend checking out some of the groups at whatever school you go to. But there's so many organizations, and if there's not an organization that you're already interested in, there is a way to make that organization happen, and there are probably people who would join it and have that same interest. I'd say joining clubs and groups is definitely the best way to build community in school. Some of the people that I consider family, that I hope to know for the rest of my life, I met in my dance group, in my a cappella group, my community engagement organization. Really, 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 really incredible people who share passions with me, who I love with my whole heart for real. I met in those groups. There are people that I really like a lot from my classes, but the people that I ended up loving, like as family, were in my organizations. And that's because, you spend more time with them, depending on the intensity of the organization or the commitment of the organization. So would definitely recommend using college and the plethora of organizations that Ivy League schools have to offer, especially the larger ones, to find your tribe, find people that have the similar passions that resonate with the things that you care about, because it definitely matters. If I want to be honest, that's the biggest pro. So that kind of leads me right into my next point of whether or not I think it's worth it to attend an Ivy League school. It depends. I know that's not the answer you wanted to hear, but it really depends. For example, if the location isn't a problem, because Ivy League schools are exclusively in the Northeast, I would definitely recommend at least considering Ivy League schools, at least applying, you know what I mean? If you can afford the application fee, and you feel like you might have the SAT requirements or the grade or ACT requirements, and are relatively involved in high school, give it a shot for sure. Brown is actually the only Ivy League school that I got into. I applied to Harvard, Princeton. I wanted to get out of the South. I'm from Georgia. I had to dip. I applied to Columbia. I think that's it for the Ivies. Brown actually accepted me early. They sent me a letter before I heard back from any of the other schools saying, hey, it's likely that you'll be accepted. Just want to let you know. That was actually so dope, and really the message that I needed to hear in the college admissions process. If you have any questions about kind of what a likely letter means, you can put that in the comments. Yeah, Brown the only Ivy I got into and the one I ended up going to. But it's definitely a super unique experience just in the diversity of people and types of people that it brings there. I would say one of the biggest factors that influenced me going to Brown over any other school was the financial aid, to be honest. They paid for me fully to go there because of the family income that I had going in. So it made the most sense. Like I said earlier, the biggest pro of going to an Ivy League school was the people that I met. I really, really met people that I consider family. These are people that I still talk to this day, that I still will travel to see, that will travel to see me. Like, it's really important to be able to find a tribe. And I think they offer, because there's such a diverse breadth of people who go there, like, you're bound to find somebody who you resonate with, who resonates with you, and y'all can grow together. I think that's really, really the biggest blessing. And honestly, the biggest reason to attend college in general. Because I was pre-med, college was always kind of like a given for me. But once I switched to music and once I graduated, really is when I realized, like, oh wow, I'm going into a professional space where a majority of the people did not go to college. College is nowhere near a prereq for having a successful music career. And that was something that I definitely had to adjust to after graduating, but like, it was worth it. My college experience was worth it because of what I learned about myself and what I learned about the world and like the relationships that I formed while I was there. Those alone made the entire experience worth it. College is hard as y'all. It's stressful in more ways than just the academic ones, but it made it all worth it. Like I would do it all again to have the relationships that I built while I was there. Really invaluable for real. And also, like, it's a once in a lifetime experience. Never again really will you be in a place where people from all different corners of the world are gathered in one place for the sake of studying and learning. Like, that's actually really, really, really dope. Something very, very unique that I don't take for granted, that definitely helped shape my worldview leaving college. You know, I have a greater understanding of the world as a whole, which is super, super important when you're going back into the working world. Even if you're going back home, like I live at home now, where I grew up, but my view of the world and my view of people and experiences is so much broader now that I was able to be around people from so many different backgrounds, that I was able to learn from people of all different backgrounds. Like, that's something that's definitely invaluable. It also gives you the opportunity to potentially travel the world. You know, a lot of schools have study abroad programs. I know at Brown, at least, the ones during the semester were usually covered with your financial aid. So that's the ability to live and study in a different country and learn the language of a different country, or study in multiple countries for the same cost of going to school, which, sorry to say, when you graduate, you'll never have that opportunity again. Like, it will cost you to go live somewhere for an extended period of time. So those are all the reasons that I can think of. Those are all the pros and cons. If you have any questions about anything that I talked about today, please drop them in the comments. You can also message me on IG or TikTok or wherever. But yeah, put a comment down below what school you're applying to, or what school you go to if you're already in college, what school you're most excited about. I really appreciate y'all tapping in with me. I hope that you have a great morning, night, evening, 2 a.m., 7 p.m., whatever, and that you keep the good vibes flowing. I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.
But I'm stepping out, and there ain't no more doubting. My mind is free to buy. No, it's my season.